Coming up on today's show, we have the latest rumors surrounding Justin Fields and a potential trade down to the Falcons. And then we're going to talk about Kirk Cousins potentially being the favorite for Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot to be their starting quarterback. And then lastly, we got a juicy report that Baker Mayfield could be plan C for Atlanta. But let's start things off with the Justin Fields chatter, because this has been the loudest chatter throughout the NFL Combine, which is wrapping up right now. Earlier last week, we had NBC Sports Chicago put out a report that the Falcons and Bears reportedly discussed a trade for Justin Fields. And then more recently, USA Today and other publications have said Atlanta, Las Vegas, and Pittsburgh, and I'll also even toss in Minnesota, have shown interest in Justin Fields. Now, when Ryan Poles, the Bears GM, spoke to the media at the Combine, he said if we trade Fields, which is a very strange thing to say unless you do plan on trading that player, they want to do right by him and trade him soon, which is why you could see a Justin Fields trade happen sometime over the next week. Now, what would it cost to get Justin Fields? Well, a lot of the Diet Coke and blue checkmark drinkers got together in Indianapolis, and they are speculating that it would cost somewhere between a second or a third and a fifth. I think that's a little bit on the lighter side. That's not even how much it cost Sam Darnold, and I think Justin Fields right now has better value than Sam Darnold did when he got traded from the Jets down to the Panthers. But Jeremy Fowler put out a juicy report this morning on Justin Fields, and I wanted to share a little bit with you guys. There's plenty of smoke around Atlanta and Fields. Some around the league are wondering about the fit, thinking a Rams-influenced offense under new offensive coordinator Zach Robinson could target a Cousins-style quarterback, while others say Fields' immense talent will be maximized in that scheme. As one league source put it, Atlanta has done enough work on Fields, Cousins, and Baker Mayfield that the chances of coming away with one of them are fairly good. And my reaction to that last sentence there about Atlanta doing enough homework on all three of these quarterbacks makes me think the Falcons have some really good, bright minds right now in Flowery Branch, because the last thing you want the Chicago Bears to know is you've only got one quarterback on your mind, right? If the Bears find out that the Falcons are only interested in Justin Fields, that is only going to drive the price up for Justin Fields. Whereas if the Falcons let some rumors leak to media members that they are checking out Kirk Cousins and Baker Mayfield, all of a sudden the Bears know, well, we don't have as much leverage as we might have thought, and maybe that means instead of giving up a third rounder, the Falcons only have to give up a fourth rounder for Justin Fields. Now, my trade projection has been standing pat for the last 2-3 weeks at this rate, which is the Falcons get Justin Fields and the Bears get Atlanta's second-round pick this year and a future fourth-round pick that, depending on whether or not they extend Justin Fields, it could be upgraded to a third-round pick. Similar to the Calvin Ridley trade projection, which I'm also hearing the Jags are working towards re-signing Ridley. Fingers crossed that happens. If they do it before March 11th, Atlanta will get a second-rounder from Jacksonville. Now, we've got some more on Justin Fields. This time it's coming from Dianna Russini at The Athletic, who wrote, "Though I expect the demand for Fields to be robust, knowing teams like the Raiders, Broncos, Steelers, and Falcons are all in search of a quarterback, it appears his market is soft for now. It was hard to find strong interest from any team. One NFC general manager explained the problem with the current timing. When people know you are getting rid of something, they don't pay as much for it." Now, I still believe a deal will get done soon. I know Dianna Russini's trying to, halt the Justin Fields trade hype train and saying not a lot of guys are all that interested in Fields, but I just don't believe that. I think there is a good market for Justin Fields. I think there are a lot of teams out there that would love to have his services in 2024. And as soon as Justin Fields gets traded or Kirk Cousins agrees to come back to Minnesota, we're going to see a lot of dominoes start to fall at the quarterback position, which is why I maintain Justin Fields is a Falcon. I have never said this before about a coach or player and have been wrong. I'm batting 1,000 about this, all the way back to the coaching search. So I don't see a way this comes back to bite me in the ass again, but I still think Justin Fields, all jokes aside, will be an Atlanta Falcon. And it's got one big reason. It's because I think Kirk Cousins is going back to Minnesota. And when that happens, Justin Fields is going to be the prettiest girl at the ball for the Atlanta Falcons. So predict it. Will Atlanta trade for Justin Fields? This is the pinned comment, so scroll on down and let me know. Not do you want the Falcons to trade. You may not like Justin Fields. You may love Justin Fields. But deep down, do you believe Atlanta is ultimately going to pull the trigger on a Justin Fields trade? T for trade, P for pass. Now let's talk about Kirk Cousins, because there are some very interesting reports coming out of the NFL Combine that the Falcons may even prefer Kirk Cousins over Justin Fields. Here's what Dan Graziano had to say on Kirk Cousins. The sense I'm getting is Minnesota still wants quarterback Kirk Cousins to return, but Cousins has a very specific idea in mind for what he wants in a new contract, and the Vikings so far have not made an offer that matches it. I have been told by multiple sources this week that signing Cousins, not trading for Justin Fields, is the Falcons' top QB solution, assuming Cousins makes it to free agency. And wow, don't shoot the messenger. I like Kirk Cousins maybe more than the average Joe does. I think he is better than what the credit he gives. I think Kirk Cousins would be a great addition for the Falcons. But wow, Kirk Cousins ahead of Justin Fields when one guy is going to be on his rookie contract for another year and has a fifth-year option yet to be picked up versus a 36-year-old quarterback coming off an Achilles tear who wants somewhere between $80 to $100 million. Listen, I know Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback. He's a great quarterback, I'll say. But is he so great that he's going to be the difference maker in Atlanta going from a team that's won 7 games to 7 games after 7 games to Cousins coming in with that contract and coming off that injury and pushing this team across the finish line into the playoffs? That I'm not so sure about. Maybe make the playoffs, but win playoff games? I've got my hesitations. Now, here's what Dianna Russini had to say on Kirk Cousins. Over the next month, I'm keeping an eye on the Falcons. They believe Cousins is the type of player who moves them from a fringe playoff team to a contender. New Atlanta head coach Raheem Morris and offensive coordinator Zach Robinson both have familiarity with Cousins. Knowing this could be a seamless transition for Cousins and the talented young group of players across their roster, I expect the Falcons to compete for the rights to his contract. I still believe Kirk Cousins is going to stay in Minnesota. I know what the big J's are saying, but I still believe Kirk Cousins, who has been very public that he wants to be a Minnesota Viking, and the Minnesota Vikings learned this past season when they didn't have his services for the second half of the season just how crucial he was to their organization. I got to believe when one side wants to come back and the other side wants you to come back, they're going to figure out a way. Now, maybe they are tens of millions of dollars apart on a contract, and that will be the deal breaker, and Kirk Cousins will hit the open market. It is worth noting that if they do not re-sign Kirk Cousins by March 11th, they have tacked on so many void years for his contract that he'll have a dead cap hit for 2024 of $28.5 million. Now, I don't think that number is going to be the absolute deal breaker for Minnesota getting a deal done or not getting a deal done, but I do think it's going to move itself into the pros list of giving Kirk Cousins the contract he is looking for. Now, speaking of that contract, here is what I think Kirk Cousins is going to get. Just my personal projection. I think he's going to get a 3-year contract. I think he knows he's got teams like either Minnesota or Atlanta by the balls, and he's going to get a bit of a longer-term deal, total of $135 million. That's an average of $45 million. So it's not going to make Kirk Cousins a top 5, not even a top 6 or 7 highest-paid quarterback, but they're going to guarantee $90 million. So it's basically a 2-year, $90 million contract, which is still an average of $45, and that's been the reported number that he is seeking. So Kirk Cousins is not going to be a cheap guy, and I am just not willing to bet 90 million G's guaranteed on a 36-year-old guy coming off an Achilles when you could trade for a much younger quarterback in Justin Fields, who I think has a very high career ceiling, would not cost you nearly this much money. Draft compensation, of course, would cost you something, but let's look at Atlanta's recent second-round draft picks. so sorry, you can't pick Marlon Davidson because you got Justin Fields. Like, I think everything's going to be okay if you lose a day 2 or day 3 pick for Fields. So I'm still team Justin Fields over Kirk Cousins. But make no mistake, if they were to land Kirk Cousins, I'm not going to be super bummed out about it. I think Kirk Cousins is a great quarterback. I think he's a top 10 quarterback. You guys have seen the numbers he has put up over the last 4 seasons. And I think if he were to come to Atlanta, the Falcons would be a much better team. But I do think the Falcons are more than just a quarterback away. That's usually a cliche we hear tossed around, and I've got other concerns. Like, they only have one wide receiver on their roster for 2024. That's got to be improved, right? They've got to figure out their secondary opposite of A.J. Terrell. They've got to improve their defensive line. They've got to find a pass rush for crying out loud. I don't know if Kirk Cousins just stepping into the building with one good leg and $90 million in his pocket is going to be the thing that puts the Falcons not just into the playoffs. Because you know what? If the goal is to be the 7th seed and go 9-8 and have your asses handed to you by the 2 seed, congratulations. You can do that with Kirk Cousins. But if the goal is to go out there and win playoff games, listen, Kirk has shown he can win a playoff game or two. Actually, he won 2. He beat the Saints the one time. But the point being is, I think they are more than just a Kirk Cousins away, and it looks like his window is not big enough. Whereas Justin Fields could be here for the next 5, 6, 7 years, if not longer, and that's a much longer window. All right, let's wrap up the show by talking about Plan C. If Plan A is Kirk Cousins, as Dan Graziano put it, and Plan B is Justin Fields, and if Kirk Cousins goes back to Minnesota and Justin Fields goes to another team or Atlanta loses interest for whatever reason, what about Baker Mayfield? Here's what Dianna Russini wrote. A consolation prize for Atlanta? How about Mayfield? I expect the Falcons to try to sign him if they miss out on Cousins or if Tampa can't get a deal done with Mayfield. The Bucs have offered a new deal to Mayfield, but they're still at an early stage in their negotiations. I'm going to pass on Baker Mayfield. And let me tell you why. Because I usually try to back up my arguments and my takes and my reasoning with stats and facts and things like that. This has no factual basis behind it. But I've got a personal sports belief of if a player has a bad start with his first team, goes to a new setting, and thrives there, you should leave them in that incubator. If you try and replicate what they had at their second or third stop where they had all their success, which is what Baker had in 2023, with the new team the next season, I don't think you're going to see the same results. I know this is just me going on a limb here, but I think there is something to Baker had a lot of success in 2023, not because he just found his stroke again and he was able to get back into a rhythm. I think it was largely because of what was surrounding him in Tampa Bay, right? The culture, the coaching staff, the players. And I think picking up Baker and dropping him in Atlanta, you're not going to have that same type of success like he had in 2023 all over again in 2024. Again, this is just my own personal sports theory of if you were to struggle for a while in one area, bounce around a little bit, find success with the new team in one season, coincidentally when you're set to be a free agent again, and some other team is going to pay you big money for what you did at your last stop after some really previous rough stops, I think you're going to see more of the older version of that player than the one-hit wonder they had in 2023. So I'm not interested in Baker Mayfield. I'm going to pass on him. And I also don't think the Falcons are ever going to have a real shot at Baker. The Bucs want him back. He probably wants to go back. Like I said, for Kirk Cousins. When both sides want to make a deal happen, what usually happens in sports? A deal gets done. So pick a quarterback, Justin Fields, Kirk Cousins, or Baker Mayfield. They all got pros and cons to the way you acquire them, right? I think Kirk Cousins, if you're looking for the best opportunity to win in 2024, is your guy. But I don't think the Falcons are just one quarterback away from winning playoff games in 2024, which is why I like the longevity, and I just love Justin Fields as a player. So I'm typing a 1. I'm sticking with Justin Fields. Let me know down below in the comment section which quarterback you are rolling with. All right, that will do it for us on this edition of Falcons Today. We're going to sign off and catch up with you guys later.